that persons who have been fighting this struggle for 41 years, persons who have lost their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters on October 19th, they must have a say in how October 19th is celebrated. And we as a people who have a long heroic history must have a part to play in who we tell our children are our heroes as a people.
We can choose to be insensitive, or we can choose to find an appropriate day that does not erupt so much emotions among people.
Nobody wanted to die. So to say persons were heroic on that day, and that is coming from someone who just born at the time. It's clearly not someone who lived through an experience, someone who read in a book or got a story told to them. But please talk to others who are around, who may have a different view.
You had a blank canvas, you had the blankest of the canvases, the earliest of the canvases from since 1984. What you'd have us do is have October 19th go by as if nothing has happened. So don't come here and talk about lest we forget. What have you done to recognize so that we would not forget?
For someone reading a book or hearing someone telling a tale on the side and coming in the parliament and talking about it loosely is unfortunate.
Mr. Speaker, I consider it one of Grenada's most politically sensitive and controversial days in our history. Mr. Speaker, on the 19th of October 1983, the Prime Minister of Grenada was executed along with his colleagues. Other ordinary Grenadians, Mr. Speaker, lost their lives on October 19th, 1983. All due, Mr. Speaker, to political conflict. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if we are thinking deeply about this proposed decision. Lest we forget, on October 19, 1983, Mr. Speaker, these individuals were lined up against a wall, and they were gunned down with machine guns. October 19th, 1983. Mr. Speaker, the painful events of that day can still be referred to as the darkest day of our Grenadian history. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is the closest that Grenada has ever come to a civil war. Until now, Mr. Speaker, many Grenadians are still trying to come to grips, are still trying to cope with the trauma of October 19th, 1983. Mr. Speaker, we cannot be serious about attempting to name October 19th, 1983, October 19th, and that is why I say, whenever you think of October 19th, whichever year, 2025, 2030, what resonates is October 19th, 1983, almost synonymous. So, Mr. Speaker, it was a day when citizens fought against each other. Mr. Speaker, 41 years later, families are still asking for closure. Families are still mourning and grieving over their loved ones. As a matter of fact, they're still praying at least to have the remains of their loved ones. Mr. Speaker, while I do believe that our history must be commemorated, we must. But to name October 19th Heroes Day, in my opinion, might be very insensitive and goes against any attempt to unify our country. Mr. Speaker, I'm yet to hear any cogent, and maybe there'll be some attempts, but I'm yet to hear any cogent argument of why October 19th should be celebrated or observed as National Heroes Day. Mr. Speaker, when you think of October 19th, it carries a deep pain, hurt, a reflection that doesn't make you feel that you want to celebrate anything. Mr. Speaker, when we think of Heroes Day, on the contrary, you think of celebration. You think of national pride. You think about recognizing people of all walks of life, of all political affiliation, of all ideologies and philosophies, Mr. Speaker. You think of recognizing them for the contributions that they have made. The question is, why October 19th? Mr. Speaker, October 19th was a day people still recall, shoot at first sight. The curfew, Mr. Speaker, the activities that aggravate pain and hurt for so many people. Mr. Speaker, we can choose to be insensitive, or we can choose to find an appropriate day that does not erupt so much emotions among people. So, Speaker, except we are deaf, we must have heard the reaction to the last two celebrations. Mr. Speaker, I heard people for the very first time calling in on programs, crying, breaking down in tears, big grown men, recalling the events of October 19th and breaking down in tears. But that is just one aspect. Mr. Speaker, the anger that I've heard just over the decision to temporarily observe the day over the past 2 years, the anger, the emotions, the threats, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying, have we been listening? Mr. Speaker, compounding that was the order, the executive order pronounced by the leadership of this country that on that day, no one should play amplified music. Almost giving you a kind of curfew feeling. Mr. Speaker, you know, I really believe that much thought did not go into this. I honestly cannot believe that significant thought went into this. Mr. Speaker, even Christian holidays do not receive that kind of executive order. What are we saying? What message are we sending? But do we want to limit a celebration of heroes to that solemnity that we're promoting? Or do we want to expand this to a jubilant occasion where people, generally, whether it's during the revolution, whether the days of Uncle Gary, whether it's today, whenever, that people, just people, can be celebrated? Mr. Speaker, I am curious as to what measure of mandate did the government receive to propose that October 19th be observed as Heroes Day. Because when you go on the ground, in the constituencies, Mr. Speaker, people, regardless of their political affiliation, are saying, why not another day? People everywhere, why not another day? So this brings me to the point, Mr. Speaker, that controversial issues like these And we must have been hearing the comments. Controversial issues like these require consultation with the people, consultation with the masses. And so I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, this morning, absolutely nothing wrong with doing something about October 19th to remember especially those people who lost their lives. I have absolutely no problem with this. I also have no problem, Mr. Speaker, with naming a day as Heroes Day. But I feel strongly, Mr. Speaker, this morning, Heroes Day must not be celebrated on October 19th. And I do hope, Mr. Speaker, that the government would listen to people. Listen to people. It's not strange. It doesn't take high science to understand why the turnout was so poor last October 19th. There are people who do not mind celebrating Heroes Day, but they will not attend a Heroes Day celebration on October 19th. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I am certain that there could be heroes to be recognized who are still carrying the scars of October 19th, 1983. There are family members who will qualify at some point or the other to be named heroes who are still traumatized and probably don't ever leave their homes on October 19th, 1983. Mr. Speaker, you notice what's even happening to me. Every time I say October 19th, I say 1983. And that's not deliberate in some of the cases. I close, Mr. Speaker, with a comment made to me by an individual who was specially invited to Progress Park on October 19th. That individual said to me, Ms. Pierre, I could not go. I am still taking medication to deal with what happened on October 19th, 1983. That individual would have liked to be there, but couldn't pull herself out of her house to attend the activity. I'm simply asking this morning, this is not political. This is about emotional intelligence. This is about understanding what other people are experiencing. This is about understanding that we have 365 days, and it's just logically possible that we could find another day that we can name Heroes Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the National Heroes Bank holiday and the naming of October 19th as National Heroes Day, my contributions to the debate, Mr. Speaker, are as follows. Picking a day or any other day out of the 365 days of the year goes back to the very point I made, which is we are going to have to be serious about it as a nation as to whether we want to teach our people our history and the challenges we face as a nation. This is about national heroes, not a hero. Everyone's a hero. A parent to his child is a hero. A child to his parent. A good Samaritan who helps you along the way is a hero. We are talking about national hero in the context of statehood and nationhood. That's the first point. Mr. Speaker, if you're going to name a day as National Heroes Day in the context of Grenadian history, there is no more heroic act than a Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, and the citizens who support and defend them laying down their lives for this country. There could be no further heroic act. There could be no further act of martyrdom for one's country than having your life taken violently, tragically, in defense of Grenada, in defense of the ordinary man and woman of Grenada, and in defense of a Prime Minister and the members of his cabinet. So heroism, Mr. Speaker, comes in all forms. And most times those who become heroes don't choose to become heroes. It is by their selflessness and the act of giving, and giving the ultimate, their lives, for people, and in this case for nation, that one could truly be seen as a hero. So you see, Mr. Speaker, I probably would not have said anything, because I think we would have assumed all right-thinking, sober-minded citizens who are prepared to think about others rather than themselves would support this bill. But I listened to the member for St. Andrew Southeast say, I feel strongly this morning. I feel. Oh. Mr. Speaker, this is not about how I feel. This is about a nation. This is about sometimes confronting the difficult feelings that we have. And this is about, in difficult times, leading and making the right decision. What we have had, Mr. Speaker, is a deliberate attempt to downplay, ignore, and pretend that October 19th didn't happen. Since 1984, Mr. Speaker, since the powers that be put together the new National Party, and since it is the new National Party that has dominated electoral politics and has won in Grenada, Mr. Speaker, actually went on. Because you see, when we talk about, I have no problem in acknowledging October 19th or saying something should be done, I actually looked and I checked. The member for St. Andrew Southeast, according to Wikipedia, has been a member of parliament since 2003 and served from 2003 to 2008 and again from 2013 to 2022 and is still serving. Where was your advocacy for acknowledging October 19th? Where was your advocacy for talking about the pain and the suffering and the need for closure? So don't come here with the sanctimonious, holier than thou, I feel commentary. As painful as October 19th is, Mr. Speaker, as difficult as it is, part of nationhood is about growth. And you're not going to grow if you don't confront difficult and challenging episodes in our history, attempting to ignore it. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, for all of my adult life, on October 19th, people get up here and go to work as if nothing happened. No church service, no official state, government, parliament, judicial or executive recognition of the fact that our Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues were executed in public. You go to the fort, except for the plaque erected by the few private citizens who've carried this torch. No recognition whatsoever by a country that its Prime Minister was executed. And those who held the power for decades to at least write a letter, to at least say to schools, even if we aren't giving it a public holiday, observe it, mark it, talk about it, teach it. The Honorable MP held the post of Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs, and Information. So, Mr. Speaker, if you give holidays on days that mean nothing, that does not evoke emotion, or at least debate or discussion. What are you giving the holiday for? What are you giving the holiday for? If you believe Christ was born on the 25th of December, you'll give the holiday on the 24th or on the 23rd? Because there might be people in the country who are not Christians. So they'll object and say, well, that should not be a holiday because I'm a Muslim, I'm not getting the holiday. If you believe Christ rose on Easter Sunday, you'll give the holiday on the Sunday before? If you truly believe October 19th, and according to you, when you say 19th, you automatically think 83. Is that ingrained in us? What other day should we acknowledge as National Heroes Day? A meaningless day in the middle of July? In the middle of January? In the middle of December? So you see, Mr. Speaker, we have to go past this always attempting to appear to try and score political points because something might be controversial, or there might be persons who may not necessarily support it for emotional reasons. I completely understand that. We fully appreciate there may be some reservations, there may be some doubts. The people who have been pained the most, the wife of Morris Bishop. Mr. Speaker, she was at the event on the 19th of October, 2023. She acknowledged that she had almost given up on Grenada. So you see, Mr. Speaker, if they had made any attempt to do something for October 19th, to recognize the day, to acknowledge the day, even a church service, we probably wouldn't be here today. You had a blank canvas, you had the blankest of the canvases, the earliest of the canvases from since 1984. And you ignored the canvas. What you'd have us do is how October 19th go by as if nothing has happened. So don't come here and talk about lest we forget. What have you done to recognize so that we would not forget? Where is the textbook you commissioned as Minister of Education to investigate and teach and tell the story and recognize the pain and difficulty? Mr. Speaker, up to October, we are being briefed by the U.S. Army through the efforts of U.S. congressmen and women, and in particular Congresswoman Barbara Lee, to again go back at the United States government and army to interrogate them about the facts surrounding the bodies of Maurice, his cabinet colleagues, because we truly understand and appreciate the significance to those who've lost their loved ones of at least some rational, plausible explanation as to why the bodies have never been delivered or found. So, Mr. Speaker, passion runs both ways. Feelings run both ways. And I want to conclude on this point. This notion that we're trying to push, that everything must be about celebration and party and music, is not going to drown out the pain. The pain isn't going to go away. Saying go on fete on October 19th, or get drunk, or have a good time, is not going to take away the pain of October 19th. Nothing is going to take away the pain. But it certainly would be more painful, and it certainly is more painful to pretend it didn't happen. it will be a bigger tragedy to not acknowledge the pain, the sorrow, the tragedy, the hurt, the ongoing hurt, the fact that the pain will never disappear for those who lost their loved ones. But if we have any respect for them, if we believe in human dignity, then at least we will be respectful and solemn and recognize the ultimate sacrifice made by those who lost their lives and by those who have to live with the fact that their loved ones have lost their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But there are several issues involved in that. Firstly, a definition of what is a hero historically in Grenada. We have to discuss that. We have to discuss who are the heroes. And we have to discuss what day is best to pay tribute to the heroes. I mean, there are people, for example, there are some heroes, and I want to pay a tribute to the heroes. Some people acknowledge. There are people who are acknowledged as heroes in a context of Grenada. One, martyr. Not because he's a man from the town of St. George, but he's known as the father of federation. So I think he's a hero. I think Julian Fedor, who fought against colonialism, slavery, I think we acknowledge he's a hero. But you know, the closer you get to the people, the more controversy arises. So, Gary, Eric Matthew Gary, is a hero, but to some not. Maurice Bishop, in the view of many, is a hero, but to some not. But in order to arrive at a consensus, we must have this discussion. We must have this discussion. These issues are always accompanied by controversy. Why? Because of what we have in our society, which is a deeply divided society along several lines. So there are people who would say Gary was a hero, and people who say he was not. There may even be people who say, I saw recently there's a monarchist group in Grenada. I was quite surprised to read about this monarchist group who wants to maintain the monarchy. To them, all of these people here are not heroes. The main issue, I think, Mr. Speaker, is we have to pay tribute to our heroes, but we must have a discussion among our people. Because you see, this discussion can do two things. It can bring us together, and we can agree to disagree. And I believe we found that, because there are people who believe Gary is a hero, and at the same time believe that Bishop is a hero. So you find that we are finding ways and spaces where we can unite on the issue. So I don't want us to conflate the two issues. There is no one sitting in this house who says we should not celebrate Heroes Day. The question is how? The question is, how do we involve our people in that process? And one of the ways we can do it is what was indicated earlier. Let us have some more discussion. How, when, where, and for what? So, Mr. Speaker, let us not create further division on the issue in this house. Let us see if we can find, why didn't we establish a bipartisan committee? And I keep coming back to that, to discuss this issue. Why can't people on both sides contribute to what is a hero, you know? And I get to the second point. What is a hero versus what is a martyr? And this was raised loudly by the Martyrs Foundation, that not everybody who died on October 19th is a national hero. Fedor didn't die on October 19th. Marshall was not October 19th. So the issue that we can have a discussion without appearing to be angry at each other. Let us sit. You know, my good friend, Mr. Speaker, can I circulate two documents? One is an article by a friend, Ali Salimbi Gill, on Heroes Day, a national conundrum, and an article, a statement made by the Martyrs Foundation, because I would be quoting from it and the procedures that I should circulate the document. I have for that side and I have for yourself. And
go ahead.
If I may. And here, you need two more. And these articles indicate what was said earlier, that we need to have national discussion on these issues. Mr. Speaker, after the first announcement in 2023, there was a whole discussion. Articles written, Martyrs Foundation. You know, let's pay tribute to people like Dr. Terry Marshall, who spent years, and the families and Martyrs Foundation, years asking for this to be done. Isn't it only natural that their views should be considered? Now let us look at what my friend Mr. Gill indicated, and there are a couple of things he said that are quite relevant. There was no national discussion on the issue. There should have been community engagements linking national heroes Day to a very political and partisan moment in our history, a point made earlier. National heroes come from all levels of our society. Those are the kinds of issues that we must interrogate. For example, is Kirani James a national hero? There are people who are going to be advocating that in generations to come. But he had nothing to do with October 19th. October 19th is a solemn day in our history when people were martyred. And that is how it should be treated. I am not here condemning the attempt to celebrate heroes, because every time we express a disagreement, it is met with resistance. And I say to my colleagues, my young brothers and sisters, it is good to listen. There are those of us who have been there for decades, and we have experienced the trauma that you are reading about. October 19th is a traumatic day. My brothers and sisters, members of Parliament, sorry, Mr. Speaker, for referring to them as brothers and sisters, but I'm tempted sometimes to embrace. Mr. Speaker, look at what the Martyrs Foundation said in their statement, and we can go to them now, because I know time is limited. They indicated to the government that they do not believe two things really come out of it. One, the day. You cannot have the solemnity required in celebrating the martyrdom of the men and women on October 19th that you will have if you're celebrating Kirani James, if you're celebrating Tia Marshall, if you're celebrating persons, Julian Fedon. It is an entirely different kind of celebration. So we need to consider that. But we also need to consider what they said about the location. And these are issues these are the families. If there is anybody in the world who was impacted, it's the families of those who died on October 19th. And they said to you in this Article 1, for 41 long years, the families were urging this. 41 years, the families were urging this. Nobody listened. They had it at a particular location. Fort George, that was named at the time Fort Rupert, after Maurice's father, who died in 1973. Mr. Speaker, they urged that the event take place at Fort George, as it is currently named. They were ignored. In the articles, the event was presented to the families. Not my words. I am not making the criticism. I am here speaking on behalf of people like Dr. Marshall and others who are in the Martyrs Foundation. The event was presented to the families as a fait accompli. No input or ideas were ever sought. Their views should be sought and taken into account in a collaborative manner. Their words, not mine. The point is, Mr. Speaker, that this is a dispute not between two political parties here. That is civil society, the families, the people who experience the pain and hurt. They are speaking in this statement, this press release issued by the Martyrs Foundation. And to date, this controversy arose a year ago. A year hence, nothing has happened by way of consultation. So let's talk about the pain of the families. I agree with the member for St. David. And listen, Mr. Speaker, I'm not here condemning October 19th being celebrated. I'm saying that I do not, along with others, believe it should be celebrated as Heroes' Day. Martyrs' Day, some other thing, not Heroes' Day. So do not tell the public that we are against October 19 being a holiday. I attended the first celebration in Queen's Park because it was a good thing in my view to celebrate the lives of those who were martyred on October 19th. So just listen for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker, is all I urge. That is all I am urging. You can do what you wish because you have the House. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we can let these things bring us together or we can let it tear us apart. I recall 2009, 2010, I think it was. As Minister for Civil Aviation, I had the honor, and I call it that, to be the minister responsible for civil aviation and therefore with the responsibility for the renaming of the airport. When the announcement was made, I nearly, in fact, I think that contributed to me losing my job. But I faced the controversy head on. Friends of mine called and said, "But Peter, sure you want to do that?" I said, "If not now, when?" We proceeded, and the airport was renamed. In the initial stages, there was controversy. There was one journalist who said he will never land on the airport, he'll take boat. My good friend, he's not around anymore. But we proceeded. And you know what happened eventually? The day the airport was renamed was one of the most unifying actions since 1983. People from all parties, people from all walks of life, because people were celebrating the life of Maurice, even people who did not support Maurice. The point I'm making, brothers and sisters, Mr. Speaker, sorry, members on the other side, the point I'm making is we can use these events, these issues, to bring us together, or we can use it to continue to tear us apart. We, on the other side, represent a large percentage of people. And I'm saying this to members on the other side. Celebrating Heroes Day is an excellent initiative. Recognizing the people we see as heroes as a people is something we need to do because it is through our heroes. You read the article by my friend Salimbi Ali Gill, you will see him paying tribute to those. But at the same time, we must come together to determine who, what, where, and how. Because if we are celebrating heroes, it's not heroes of the NDC, or heroes of the NNP, or heroes of the GOLP, or heroes of the PLM. They are heroes of our nation who we here represent as one people, indivisible under God. So let us not display any tinge of divisiveness or arrogance or I know it all, you wrong and I right. There may be things that I believe that you do not agree with. That is fine. But there are things we all agree on. We all agree that we all have heroes. We all agree that they must be paid tribute to, and we must celebrate their lives. And we all agree that we must do it in a way that brings our people together. So every 5 years or every 10 years, we name a new national hero. A national hero is not somebody you just name. You wake up one morning and say, boy, you know what? I like Virgin Andy, you know, and he's a hero. No. We must find the criteria for determining what a national hero is. Maybe one day my brother Andy will be a hero to future generations. But for now, not now, not yet. But we must agree on the process. So I say to my brothers on the other side, if you don't want to listen to me, listen to our intellectuals who are writing on the issue, like Mr. Gill, etc. Listen to the Martyrs Foundation and the families who are impacted by what took place in October 19th. Listen to them. I am merely here, you have the articles, you have all the information. I am merely here to say to you that persons who have been fighting this struggle for 41 years, persons who have lost their mother, father, brothers, sisters on October 19th, they must have a say in how October 19th is celebrated. And we as a people who have a long heroic history must have a part to play in who we tell our children are our heroes as a people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Heroes Day is a necessary initiative. But the problem is, as others have pointed out, the necessity for bringing people together and having serious consultation with the population in a non-partisan way is crucial for an issue of this nature. It is not for one side of the House of Parliament to decide on a particular issue of this nature. It's the country. It's a national holiday. So there needs to be some serious consultation with the population as a whole. Now, Mr. Speaker, you know, some people would have read about October 19th. A few of us have lived it. And I think that's a fundamental difference. Reading something, in fact, some of them, their fathers would know about it. But some of them may have read about it. So to imply that no serious thought was given about this over the years is fundamentally false. I remember the first period of sitting in cabinet of the country in 1984. There were lengthy discussions and differences of opinion expressed of how we treat October 19th. And in the country as a whole, I can speak to this, and I'm reading about it. I speak to it because I was right there. October 19th, while there wasn't an announcement of the solemnity of the day, it was a solemn day throughout the country. If you drove around Grenada on October 19th for the first several years, you would have noticed this. In many churches, not just one religion, different religious organizations, there were services all parts of the country. Because people, this was fresh. People are still mourning the loss of good friends. Good friends. I would always remember Eunice Whiteman was a very good friend of mine. We were teaching at Presentation College together. And I know he was a good man, very good intention, and so on. So every time that day comes, It's a solemn one for me. Besides the loss of friends and family members, but he represented something because I know he had a good heart as a person. So to say that nothing was done, and it's sad. I wish the member of St. David's was in the house, because I really think, especially in his position as our Prime Minister, I think the member for St. Andrew Southeast was expressing a concern, and he seemed to have taken this in a negative way. She wasn't talking, Mr. Speaker, and criticizing the government. She was talking about how she felt. And he's almost saying she had no reason to express how she felt. How could you tell someone that? How could you tell someone as if the person is playing games? The member is expressing herself about that event. And that was the response. I think it's sad. It is sad. And even words like she's playing to be sanctimonious and playing she's an advocate of the tragedy of that time, and what had she done? He would not have even known if she had done anything. He couldn't even ask, Mr. Speaker. The problem I have is fundamentally about the government. This government has never consulted anybody, period. The members of the opposition who's been in government for several years, who have done a number of major initiatives, not just one of us, many members. You would have thought an issue of that nature, at least a consultation, a meeting of the minds. There are other issues, but I can't tell people who to consult and who to talk to, because when I called to just express my congratulations, I was told in a national event, I want you to know, he called me and I didn't call him. So that alone started off to me making a call to that number again at all. And I never get one since 2.5 years, after almost 40 years in the parliament of the country. But everyone has a choice. That's one's choice. And you can't force anyone to have a relationship or to consult or to want to be. Maybe they're not used to this. Maybe that's not their DNA. It's in their DNA. All of us have our own DNA. It's very unique. So I can't force anybody to be like me. And I cannot force myself to be like somebody else, because it won't come out. It won't come out well, because I can't be anybody but me. But at least there's some fundamental principles of human relation where we consult and talk to each other. Mr. Speaker, I don't see how I could support October 19th as Heroes Day. To me, you're putting the cart before the horse. That is my view. As if, I know for some people, we're not supposed to have views. That's my view. That might not be your view, but I can only have mine. And it's good to have other views, and that's okay. So, Mr. Speaker, criticizing and making this thing almost like a political thing. I didn't think this was a political initiative at all. That's why I said I have no difficulty with initiative. But when I hear that criticizing the NNP for not recognizing that day, which is totally not true. It doesn't mean that the only time you recognize a day is that you have a holiday. Is that only way you could recognize and show some empathy for a particular event. I pointed out already how many church services and activities occurred on that solemn day. The issue of a holiday came up, but there was great division. There was not a unanimous. And around the country, we tested it with several groups and persons in the society, and there was mixed results. I don't know, maybe the government has in fact done that, and if it did it and found out it was necessary and supportive, the people supported, then okay, I don't have a problem. And I'm not going to criticize, I don't know whether the government did. But to imply that it was not considered, it's so clearly false and not necessarily the kind of approach. Mr. Speaker, I heard it said, October 19 represents a heroic day, because some people as if people made a decision to be executed on a particular day, as if they made a decision knowing that they were going to be executed, and it's like many of the saints of the past, they tell us, face execution and knew what they were going to face and went up voluntarily and so on. I don't think anyone in October 19 wanted to be killed and wanted Grenada to be killed. I heard comments of people who were in the room when the armored cars start knocking down buildings and doors. And they were there with the leaders. And everybody was traumatized, including the leader. Nobody wanted to die. So they say persons were heroic on that day. And that is coming from someone who was just born at the time. It's clearly not someone who lived through an experience. Someone who read in a book or got a story told to them. But please talk to others who are around, who may have a different view and would understand what took place. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. It is sad that we have to be literal countering expressions that took place here today on that bill. We should not have to do this, because that means the things should not have been said. So we should not have to counter it. Take, for example, about the U.S. aid and what didn't we ask about the bodies and so on. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. And the first time we will be saying it here, because it was raised. As Prime Minister of this country, it's well known, I had a very good relationship with the President of the United States, George Bush. That's history. Probably one of the few prime ministers in the region that went to the White House at least 5 times during his tenure, discussing major issues. And that issue came up in one of those sessions. A session with former Prime Minister of Australia was also the 3 of us at the White House, John Howard. And I raised that issue to the President. And I know instructions were given. And I met with several officials of the government, State Department, and the Army, men who were in Grenada at the time. And all was saying the same. And I reported back to the cabinet discussions that took place. And they disavow anything, knowledge of where the bodies were. They did. Whether you can say they're telling the truth or not, that is what happened. But we, in other words, at the highest level, we took it to the highest level. For someone reading a book or hearing someone telling a tale on the side and coming in the parliament and talking about it loosely is unfortunate. So I had to say it here today. I have never said that in the parliament. But because we are being accused. So we went at lengths, Mr. Speaker, to deal with this funding because it's a painful period. This is not something anyone wants to enjoy talking about here this morning. We can't enjoy this. The fact is October 19 brings in a lot of painful memories to people who were wronged at that time and others, Mr. Speaker, yes, and others who may have been told the right stories. So I just want to, in closing, Mr. Speaker, I hope the next time we speak about this important event, October 19th, it does not have to be a holiday to be accepted. You don't have to name a holiday to treat a particular day. In fact, you could call it a day of reflection and ask for people to have specific events on that particular day, not necessarily going on holiday. If it has to be, then so be it. And I don't believe, as was rightly said by almost every member on this side who spoke, we have no difficulty with it. But it doesn't have to be for us to be able to reflect this, the event, to our children and grandchildren's future of this country, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, on that note, because of the issues raised by members on this side, I cannot, on my own feelings on this, I cannot in conscience support October 19th as a holiday and call it National Heroes Day.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.